In today's video, we are going to be looking at more examples of the relative minor scale, and I have a very simple question that I would like to ask of you. What is the relative minor of the given scale? So we're going to look for what is the relative minor of D major, B major, and finally F major for the examples in this video. Let's go ahead and get started. What is the relative minor for D major? Well, we know first off we need to build the D major scale. And I'm just going to run through that very quickly, and that would look something like this. Okay, and then we want to know the relative minor, and we know that the relative minor is the 6th degree of its major scale, and so we can just, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And so the relative minor scale for D major would be B minor. And what does that mean? Well, what it means is that the notes in B minor are exactly the same as the notes in D major. Let's move on. Let's go ahead and let's look again here for the B major scale. Okay, so we're going to write this out. So we're just sort of running through this very quickly here. And that would give us the notes in our B major scale. Now we want to figure out, well, what is the relative minor to B major? And so once again, we can go ahead and just sort of count it out. And we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And the relative minor here would be G sharp minor. G sharp minor. And let's do one last example for this particular video. And let's figure out what is the relative minor for F major. And so once again, we have to write out our F major scale. G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Let's grab our B flat and let's number these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Probably do that over here. 7, 8, or 1, same thing. And let's go ahead and figure out, well, what is the relative minor there? And the relative minor to F major would be the 6th degree, and that would give us a D minor scale. And again, we just really want to understand that those scales are the same. So let's really kind of just zero in on maybe one of these examples, and we're going to zero in on this guy up here. D major and B minor. All right, so let's write out our D major scale again, and here we had D major, and that was D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and D. And then I wanted to sort of prove to you why is B minor the relative minor, like how does that actually work? And so what I'd like to do then is actually write out the B major scale, and let's find out what the B major scale is going to be, and that's going to be B, C, well, we actually have it written up here, don't we? So we could just sort of look at that. D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, and then back to B. And we know that to make a B minor then, to finally make our B minor scale, we have to flat 3, 6, and 7. And so we're going to simply do that. And when we do that, we're going to have B, C sharp, flatting our 3, right? So it gets rid of this. D, E, F sharp, flatting our 6, G, flatting our 7, A, and then back to B. And here what you should notice is when I look at this D major scale, comparing it with this B minor scale, they have the same notes. I have 2 sharps in each one of those instances. I've got an F sharp and a C sharp, and here I also have F sharp and I have C sharp. So this is sort of another way of finding out that, okay, these are related. So we call this the relative minor. Now, a lot of times it can also be useful to go the other direction. Like if I'm given a major scale and I ask you for the minor scale, that's one thing. But what if I wanted to go the other direction? What if I wanted to go, well, what if I have the minor scale and I wanted to get to the major scale? Well, first off, I want to clarify some language here. And what we really want to do is we want to call this the parent major. We want to call this the parent major scale. And so what we can do is we can do 2 things. And let's maybe look at our example here again of D major, because we know that D major now is the same thing as B minor. And so I'll write out my D major scale. G, A, B, C, sharp, and D. Okay, and I know that, let's go ahead and label these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, back to 1. Well, I have really two choices. One is if I knew that if I'm starting with B minor, if somebody had given me that piece of information, then I know that I'm really starting on 6 because that's the 6th degree of the major scale. And I could do a couple of things here. I could really just count backwards from 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that would get me to my first degree. If I do that, I have to be very, very careful. I have to pay very careful attention to what is going on over here. Hopefully you know why, because there is a half step between 3 and 4. So a lot of times students will forget that. They go, hey, I can build a whole, I can build a major scale properly, but they forget that there's a half step between 3 and 4 when you're counting backwards. So you just have to pay attention. Now, the other way that we could also arrive at that answer is I could go forward from 6 to 7 to 1. Well, how far is that distance? I know that 6 to 7 is a whole step, and I know that 7 to 1 is a half step. So this altogether is 1.5 steps. So you could take any root note for a minor scale, and you could start there and go 1.5 steps forward, and that would also get you to the parent major scale.